Some mitzvot in the Torah are clearly directed to the individual. In other words, the individual has to keep Shabbat. It's not a mitzvah aimed or directed at the nation as a whole also, but every individual has to keep Shabbat. Every individual has to, say Birkat HaMazon. It's a mitzvah shel prat, individual mitzvah. And there are mitzvot which are aimed at the klal, at the nation, on the national level. An individual cannot build a Bet Mikdash. That's something that the Jewish nation, or more specifically the leadership, the government, the regime has to decide that it wants to do. The Talmud says it, Meforashim, Bava Batra Daf Daled, in Malchutha La'it Bani Makdasha. Without the Malchut, without the government wishing it to be so, the Mikdash cannot be built. It's referring there to Hodus, but it doesn't matter. The fact is that Hodus decided to remodel the Mikdash, but he could do that because he was the king. If someone else who was not the king wanted to do it, it wouldn't have happened. However, does that mean that if something is, generally speaking, a mitzvah directed at the klal, that the individual therefore is, as it were, completely exempt or not involved in that mitzvah? No, I think that's entirely incorrect. Someone sent me something that someone wrote to them.
While you're looking,
referring to Mahiyat Amalek, the wiping out of Amalek, which we've discussed many times. So this person quoted someone else who said, in Hebrew it says as follows: Hu amar shezo miswa le'umit v'lo pratit shel adam ze o acher. This is a national mitzvah, and the person really in charge of doing away with Amalek is the king. And I think this statement is incorrect. Pass me the Sefer HaChinuch for a second. Let's see if I can find this quickly. You're right, that's what the Mishnah says in Avot. And Lo alecha hamelacha ligmor, ve'en ata ben horin libatel mimena. That's what you just quoted. Correct. But here I'm discussing something which explicitly, where explicitly the mitzvah is clear that it's a national mitzvah. So, what is the role? What position does the individual play in such a thing? In mitzvah Tau Aleph in the Sefer HaChinuch, who is a Talmid of the Rashba, mitzvah Tamidim b'chol yom. There's a mitzvah for Am Yisrael to bring 2 korbanot tamid b'chol yom every day. There's the morning tamid and the afternoon tamid in the Mikdash. Now the Mikdash is not a private enterprise, as we just said before. Individuals cannot build a Mikdash. They haven't got the wherewithal. They won't be able to do it if the government wishes to stop them. That's why we're not doing Korban Pesach on Erev Pesach, for that reason, because they won't allow it. So the question is, who's responsible to make sure this happens? If it's a national mitzvah, every Jew can say, well, it's a national mitzvah, it's the king's problem, it's the Beit Din's problem, it's nothing to do with me, I'm not involved. So I'm patur, I'm exempt, I have no standing in this matter. All you can ask for me is machasita shekel, give me once a year machasita shekel, and I mishtatef, I participate, I will have a certain small part in the mitzvah, but who's going to really be responsible to make it happen? That's him or those people over there, not me. Sefer HaChinuch writes, שנסתוו ישראל שיקריבו על ידי משרתי השם יתברך שהם הכהנים שני כבשים בני שנת ימים לעולה בכל יום. Am Yisrael was commanded to have these 2 korbanot brought every day by the Kohanim. ומכל מקום, says the Chinuch, עיקר הזרה לבית דין. The people who are really responsible for this is the Beit Din, the Sanhedrin. In other words, Chachmei Torah. They're responsible to make sure that it happens.
Our leadership.
Klomar, HaChachamim, Morei HaTorah sheB'Yisrael. The great Chachamim, the central Torah authority, Alehem muteret melechet HaSibur. They are responsible to ensure that which the Tzibur, the Klal, Am Yisrael is responsible, requested, is instructed to do, actually happens. Okay, very good. He goes on to say, ונוהרת מסווה זו בזמן הבית. This miswa is operable. One can actually attempt to make this happen when the Mikdash stands, not when the Mikdash does not stand. והוא מן המצוות שהן מוטלות על הציבור, and it is the responsibility of the ציבור, ויותר על הכהנים, and the responsibility specifically of the kohanim, who are and as we said also before, the kohanim, the chachamim are responsible to make sure that all these things happen. ואם שמא חס ושלום יתרשלו בה, but if, however, the kohanim, the beth din, all these other people who are supposed to be in charge, are negligent, they just don't make sure these things actually take place. שלא להקריבם בכל יום. בטלו עשה זה. They are responsible for negating this mitzvah. והשטרה נתלית על כל עדת בני ישראל היודעים בדבר, אם יש כוח בידם לתקן בשום צד. Every individual Jew who is aware of the problem, of the fact, and is able to do something about it, is also responsible to do something about it. In other words, and the fact is, I think also, this we'll discuss another time, but the same is true with Amalek and all sorts of other things. It's a general miswa, but that does not mean that the individual has no role to play in this. That's why the Sefer Chinuch also says that if a person came across one of the Shivat HaMamim or Amaleki and did not do what he's required to do, then he's responsible for having been the Vatela Miswa. In other words, the individual also has a role to play in these things. My point is that it's all too convenient. It's actually a cop-out, what many people do when they say, well, it's the responsibility of the Melech or the Memshala, or in principle that's correct, that's true. But if you're aware of something and these other people or these institutions are not doing and acting as they should, then the responsibility devolves on all individual Jews to try and do something about it. It's not true that we have this convenient cop-out clause in the contract where we can say, well, it says here that the government, the king, the kohanim, they're responsible. Who am I? I'm just, Chaim Shmerel. I don't know anything about this. It's not my business. So I have no responsibility. Not true. Not true. There are some people who like to use this reasoning in order to make their own lives easy, to say it's something for the government to decide. It's not for us to decide. It's not for us to do. This is not true. Fighting the enemy in general is not just a government proposition. It's not true. The halacha hatov shebagim harog b'sha'at milchama is brought in Rambam twice. Also brought in the Shulchan Aruch twice. Not at all in the context of a national miswa at all. In Yichot Avodah Zarah and in Yichot Rotzeach, it's talking about the individual, clearly. That halacha does not come up in Yichot Melachim or Milhamot. There, in Rambam, in Yichot Melachim Milhamot, he talks about all the national miswot. But that concept of Tosh Bagoim Harog B'Shat Milchama is clearly talking about an individual who comes across one of the enemy and he can get rid of him. And if he doesn't do so, then he's responsible for not having done so. So do not buy into that kind of hashkafa, that kind of philosophy, which to a large extent is simply a way of abdicating one's responsibility and throwing all responsibility and all obligation on somebody else. That's not true. A lot depends on the Jews, each one of us. So in other words, it's clear that if, for example, if a huge number of Jews in Eretz Yisrael were to demand the Korban Pesach, it would be difficult for the government to disallow it. As long as there's a few people who can easily be labeled as fanatics and crazies and marginal, peripheral people who are radicalized or what have you, then it's easy to say we're not going to do this. And it's true, most people don't want to do it. But if many more Jews, individual Jews, wanted to do it and made this known, that would change the equation. That's how these things work. So let us not forget that as well.